So in a recent video, I mentioned something in passing about 3 different types of transition words or phrases. And I said, hey, maybe I should make a separate video about that. And a couple of commenters said, yes, do that. And so that's what I'm doing here. And we'll begin by focusing on an example that actually involves all 3 of those different types of transition words or phrases. And so let's just go ahead and read the question. It says, even though the experiment's participants knew that the test would require a commitment, namely several hours a week spent sharing and commenting on scientific articles online, blank publicity about their involvement in advancing research was enough to motivate many to participate. Deep breath. So that's a pretty long sentence. What can we do to simplify it? Well, the first thing I would do is to take this interruption, this portion enclosed within the pair of dashes, and just cross it out. Okay, now I should say to adjust the punctuation, we'll just say that there's a comma here because, oh, long story, but you wouldn't do 2 dashes followed by a comma. But if we were to not have that portion at all, we would just have a comma there. This isn't a punctuation video, so I'll just say take my word for it. Okay, so our simplified version of the sentence, even though the experiment's participants knew that the test would require a commitment, blank publicity about their involvement in advancing research was enough to motivate many to participate. And so what do we have here? Well, to begin the sentence, we have a subordinator. Even though, or just though would work. Even though, although, while, etc. So even though, I'm just going to include that as 1 or count that as 1, but that's an example of a subordinator. So a subordinator or subordinating conjunction is something that tells you that you have a subordinate or dependent clause coming up. So words such as until, because, although, if, unless, and there are a whole bunch of others. I don't know why I'm writing my U's that way, but there are a whole bunch of others. But what these tell us, again, is that we have a subordinate or dependent clause, and that means that that portion will need to be followed by, in most cases, a comma, although this sentence is a little bit different because of that interruption. But that is a dependent clause. So, dependent clause. Well, this is going to lead us to our answer, because if you have a dependent clause at the beginning of the sentence, you will need a comma, but you don't need another transition word after it. And so we don't want that, or that. And our correct answer here is then going to be D. But anyway, that's one of the types. Even though, although, etc. Subordinating conjunctions. We also have 2 different types in terms of what remains here. So we've got but. What is but? But is a coordinating conjunction. Coordinating conjunction. So coordinating conjunctions, these are the easiest ones to remember, at least to remember all of them, because of the handy acronym fanboys. So for, and, nor, but, or, yet. So I should emphasize that these words are not always used as coordinating conjunctions, but when they are used that way, they can be used to join 2 independent clauses with a comma. So, it is raining, but I'm still going out for a walk. Okay, so those are 2 independent clauses. It is raining, and then I'm still going out for a walk. So if we wanted to connect those with a comma, we could certainly do that, provided that we use one of these conjunctions. Again, but or yet could work in that specific example. And then a third type, which we also see represented here, would be however. Okay, so what is however? However is a transitional adverb, or it's also known as a conjunctive adverb. And I guess conjunctive would be good to use here because coordinating conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, conjunctive or transitional adverbs. And it wasn't until, relatively late in life that I learned that these words were indeed adverbs, because they don't really look like what comes to mind when you think about adverbs? Well, I guess consequently does because it ends in an ly. But usually when we think of adverbs, we think of words that end in ly, quickly, slowly, suddenly, etc. So some of them do, but a lot of them don't. So however, therefore, moreover, furthermore, thus, so on and so forth, etc. And so these are the words or phrases that you're going to encounter in the transition word questions. And those questions that you encounter on the digital SAT are going to be all about the meaning. In other words, picking the right word that connects the two sentences or two portions in question. Sometimes, and although I haven't seen this on the Blue Book tests or other practice materials, sometimes they will give you a question like this one in which you have to choose between the different types. So when you see a mix of these different transition words, it's very important to take stock of the different components that are being connected. Like in this case, we have an independent clause there, and then we have a second independent clause here. And remember, an independent clause is just something that can stand on its own as a complete sentence. And so if you look at the answer choices here, you might notice that all of these are essentially the same in terms of their meaning. I mean, however, but, and even nonetheless can all be thought of as contrast words, but they are not all the same part of speech. However and nonetheless are transitional adverbs or conjunctive adverbs again. So transitional adverb or conjunctive adverb. The coordinating conjunction but is the one that we're going to want here. You cannot correctly join two independent clauses with just a comma and a transitional adverb. And that's true whether that transitional adverb is followed by a comma or not. So that's what C and D, and for that matter, A, have in common. They're all just the wrong part of speech to join the two independent clauses that we have here. Now, I'll note that it is possible to have a however contained within a pair of commas. It's just that when you have a word like however, therefore, nonetheless, etc., in between a pair of commas, that transitional adverb cannot be used directly at the point where two independent clauses meet. Okay, so this is definitely going to be relevant when it comes to questions like this one, which I've discussed in a different video, but questions like this one, and then again, to emphasize that these questions are totally different. These are not about punctuation. These are strictly about meaning. These have to do with both punctuation and meaning in terms of what punctuation marks we want and then where we want our contrast word or transition word relative to those punctuation marks. So again, I've talked about this example and this example in a different video, which I can link to. But here I just wanted to give a recap or an overview of those three main categories of transition words or phrases. So if you have any questions, including specific examples involving different kinds of transition words that you'd like me to go over, please leave those in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope you found this helpful. Stay tuned for more test prep content from 345 Tutoring.